as we said earlier, which is the perfect time to practice forgiveness.
Forgiveness, it's one of the most challenging things to do, especially when the harm done to you or someone you love is severe. It's so hard to forgive sometimes.
It can be very hard to forgive, but actually holding on to long-term resentment can have a negative impact on your life. So joining us with tips is Dr. Rob Robinson, Clinical Director of Family Care Counseling Associates in Wilbraham. Dr. Robinson, nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
It's the REACH method. That's what we're going with.
Yes, actually, yeah. This is a technique that was developed by a psychologist named Everett Worthington, and it really was in response to an unbelievable trauma. His mom was murdered by a group of guys, and she was an elderly person, and he obviously was very upset about what had happened and was traumatized by it, and developed this whole technique that's based on an acronym, REACH, which is REACH, and each one of those letters stands for a particular stage of trying to practice and then, work forgiveness into your life.
I think sometimes you almost feel guilty to forgive when it's something that's so severe. Like, I can't forgive because it's just not forgivable.
Right. It's one of the more difficult psychological things to do. I mean, particularly if it depending upon the level of hurt or the trauma that you experience. But, if you're always tormented by the thinking and the resentment and the anger that you've harbored over this, it can really impact the quality of your life and really distract from being able to be happy and move forward.
So let's utilize this teaching tool so a lot of people at home can help to come and overcome all of this. R, recall the event.
Right. So the R is recall, and really what this is about is trying to, in our field called systematic desensitization, which is just trying to get your thoughts to begin to calm down over the event. So it's recalling the details of what happened, but then trying to replace the anger and the resentment with thoughts that calm you down, like taking a deep breath and saying to yourself, I'm learning to let go of this, and repeating that and practicing that over time. And that it does take time, so that you're eventually beginning to neutralize some of the impact of recalling what had happened.
Up next, I think this might be the hardest one. It's empathizing with the person who hurt you. Yeah. Good luck. That seems really difficult.
This is one of the most difficult steps, and it really has to do with being able to understand what happened through a perpetrator's point of view. The guy who developed this technique said it might be useful to think about it if you were the defense attorney presenting a case defending the person. And it's not because you're trying to, come down with the most detailed explanation of what happened, but just enough to be able to understand how that might have occurred. Oftentimes people who do damaging things to other people or wounded themselves, for example, and they act out of those wounds, and you sometimes have to go there to be able to understand how that may have happened in the first place.
Absolutely, and I think that phrase, put yourself in their shoes, sometimes it's just doing that to see it from a different perspective can be very helpful.
Exactly.
A, tell us about A and what that stands for.
Well, A stands for the altruistic purpose of being able to forgive, which is to see it sometimes as giving a gift to another person. And one of the ways that you might think about this is to recall a time maybe when you've been feeling guilty about something you may have done to somebody, but someone forgave you and how it made you feel. Now that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go and re-embrace the person that hurt you, because oftentimes that's not a great idea. But that doesn't mean you still can't practice forgiveness or give it to a gift to yourself, for example. So there's an altruistic purpose to being able to practice forgiveness as well.
And then the next step is to committing yourself.
Yes.
It's taking that leap and saying, I'm going to do it. I'm committing to trying to right these wrongs and start the process.
Yeah, and the commitment piece, two things can help with that. One is being able sometimes to create a forgiveness ritual, which is basically, doing something that reminds you that you've let go of this, or telling somebody you trust that you're doing it so that, if you bring it up again, they can help you return to the fact that you've made this commitment on this particular day at this time to let go of it, to just forget about it and not bring it into your attention any longer. And sometimes rituals, some people do different things. They bury things, they burn things, they let balloons go or whatever, but rituals sometimes really solidify symbolically the fact that you finally have made this commitment to do it.
And it takes energy to hold on to that resentment. It takes energy and takes up space in our life to really hold on to it. So you say instead, the H stands for hold on to forgiveness.
That's right, because even though you've gone through all of these steps and you've committed to it, it doesn't mean that your mind is not going to ignite with the thoughts of what occurred. it happens over and over again. The mind will constantly try to recall these traumatic events because that's how we're wired. But the H part of the reach stands for holding on to it, so that, you know, once you've made the commitment and this keeps returning into your thought pattern, you can notice it, see it that it's there, not judge it necessarily, but again, remind yourself that you've held on to this and you're trying to just let it go. And through these steps, and the gentleman who actually designed this technique did a lot of research around it and working with patients, and there's research results about how effective this process is. Not easy, but it's very effective in helping people let go of things.
It might not be easy, but it's important to try. Because if not, we're just going to be harboring ill feelings for the rest of our life, and that doesn't do anybody any good.
Precisely. It doesn't.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Thank you very much,
Robinson.
guys.
Love having you here.
More tips at mymassappeal.com, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.